All right, I'll call this meeting to order.
4:11.
We're down to 2 members at least for right now, but that's fine. So, we had a successful town meeting. The capital list of items got approved. And we talked about trying to examine where we need to go in the coming year, what we need to do, and how we need to organize and things like that. And I know I've mentioned repeatedly that Ira, who works with me and for me at PVPC, but also has a lot of experience with capital planning in South Hadley, that it would be good to have somebody who's been through this and without all the pieces of input to allow us to have a discussion. Oh, we're not.
No, we're good. I got it up on that.
So with that, I figure this should be pretty open. We should just kind of like allow things to happen and allow. I'm thinking, Ira, if you're cool with that, is give us a 5-minute thing of how you see the committee supposed to be working in the town, your view of how it works like in South Hadley in the best ways possible, and also lessons learned that you might have from some of the stuff in South Hadley. Now, I will say there's one difference, which is that South Hadley has the bylaw in place for this committee. We do not officially have that at this time. I don't know if anybody's really against it, but they didn't go that route, at least initially.
But from a functional standpoint, that doesn't matter.
Thanks for having me. So as Eric said, I'm from South Hadley, been there a long time, and I've served on lots of different boards. I've been on the select board and school committee to, most of the boards in town, over several decades. Our capital planning committee has been in place for 25 years or more. It has operated for the majority, if not all of that time, under a bylaw. That actually was just revised. We updated it just a year ago. And you're correct, you don't need to have a bylaw that discusses any of the capital planning process. So you can or you can't, and I think it's fine that, you've gotten started and didn't do that immediately. That's, totally fine. So you basically got like an ad hoc committee. I don't know, it's a 5-member committee. Was it, did the select board specifically want 5 members? Okay. And you have.
It's really not ad hoc. I mean, there is an official policy in place, and they didn't go with the bylaw because in case they wanted to make some changes.
Yeah.
They weren't handcuffed by an actual having to change a bylaw.
Right, so get it started and see how it goes, and then maybe not. Figure it out and then codify it.
And we're officially called the Capital Improvement Planning Committee.
Yep. I sent a bunch of documents to Eric.
He's going to pull them up for us.
Right over here. Oh, okay, all right, good. With regard to having a bylaw or not, the one benefit of having it is that it just codifies what it is, what the role of the capital planning committee is. It requires certain things, although that can always be waived in terms of the town meeting process, in terms of the flow of communication. My experience has been that over the years, having that bylaw in place that says that certain things must happen and or are supposed to happen kind of controls decisions that are made and keeps things from not getting too much out of hand. That being said, any bylaw can be, what's in it can be waived. It's a bylaw. It's not a whole lot different than a policy, other than it's created by town meeting as opposed to by the executive branch of town government. So anyway, the role of, so we have in South Hadley a 9-member board. There are various constituencies that appoint their membership. So We have 3 members appointed by the select board. 3, and this is in the bylaw, which you have a copy of now. 3 that are appointed by what we call the appropriations committee. You probably have a finance committee. It's more or less the same thing. 2 that are appointed by the school committee and 1 that's appointed by the planning board. And they're all 3-year terms. As much as possible, they're staggered so that everybody doesn't get obviously reappointed at the same time.
So just to correct, we're actually, now that you mentioned that, we're a 7-member board. We have 2 de facto members, the head of the highway department and the facilities managers for the schools.
So non-voting
Yeah,
members.
they're 2 non-voting.
And we report officially to the town manager and the select board.
So, so we have the same, so we have 9 voting members and then additional advisory or ex officio members that are involved regularly. The town did, a couple of years ago, create the position of Director of Building Operations, and he's been extremely helpful in keeping us on task, taking more of the roles off of sort of the admin type roles away from the committee, which has been extremely helpful, particularly to me as chair of the committee. It's been good. I've been the chair for about 3 years or so. Let's see. So our bylaw requires at town meeting that the capital planning committee weigh in on any article that has to do with capital. So the town moderator will ask, for the recommendation of, and we're a recommending body just as you are, for the recommendation of, as well as the appropriations committee, the same thing. In addition to recommending projects or equipment that's to be purchased on any given budget year, we also recommend, and this is a fairly recent addition to our responsibility, we also recommend the source of funds. So those sources of funds, as I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you guys don't already know, but free cash, stabilization fund, out of the operating budget, perhaps a grant. That's more or less it. There's occasionally, so for instance, we had quite a bit of money actually that was consolidated in this last town meeting from previous appropriations, and rather than ask for a new allocation, we just closed out a bunch of projects and then transferred from, say, I don't know, forget how many, say a half a dozen different projects, and said, so this amount of money will go to fund, recommend go to fund a certain item. I was just talking to Mike, right? I was just asking Mike before the meeting about enterprise funds.
So this is Rick.
Rick?
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
About enterprise funds. So
Okay.
we, and actually that's another source of funds. So enterprise funds to go toward capital projects for those specific departments. Ours would be wastewater treatment, our municipal golf course, landfill. Might be missing one. So that's that.
Is there enterprise money for, I'm on the building and grounds committee and we're doing Tagil School.
For
And
what school?
Tagil School, it was one of the older schools here, since been shut down. It needs a new roof. And we're looking for funding sources for that. I didn't know if.
We'd love to take South Hadley's money if you have extra.
But I mean,
You're
no,
the
I'm trying
same,
to
you're the
find.
same motion you're in.
Yeah, so, do you know how enterprise funds work?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would have to have been set up for Tangil.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have a sewer fund, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Wastewater treatment.
Wastewater treatment, so it would, those, any excess funds or would have to be identified coming
Right.
only for use for the wastewater
Right.
treatment system, yeah.
But your golf course, for example, if they have a capital need, do they come before your committee and say?
Yes.
We have the money, we want to spend it, we need your blessing?
Yes.
Is that how that?
Yeah, I mean, town meeting has to approve it. It just, if you have, whether it's part of the operating budget or if you've got, excess funds that you want to
Right.
put toward a project, those, just like free cash, it's got to be approved by town meeting.
But they come before you to make the pitch, to get your blessing before they go, okay, all right, thank you.
But your town meeting is different than ours. You have a representative town meeting.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
It's the same thing, but.
Other than that, it functions exactly the same way.
Gotcha. All right.
Let's see. So we have finally gotten back after several years, probably the better part of 10 years, of not really having an approved, well-defined 5-year plan or long-term capital plan. We've finally gotten back for the very first time this past town meeting to actually having that for the residents and town meeting members. It's always been, for a long time, it was just in draft form and it was very amorphous. It was changing a lot. It was something that in my view, wasn't real good, but we've kind of fixed that.
How did you have a capital, this might be a backwards question, but how did you have a capital planning committee and not have a 5-year capital plan, or was that just brute force of the politics and the way things were going kind of thing?
I wouldn't characterize it as that.
Okay,
So the thing that we are charged with and must do under the old bylaw, we strengthened it, including there's now a requirement that there be a long-term plan. But the thing that we've always been required to do is to present a capital budget. So, there's a distinction between the capital budget and in the DLS, the state stuff that you've probably looked at.
Yep.
They make that distinction as well. We took it right from there. So
okay,
capital budget is 1 year. That's the current year. Capital plan is more long-term. By definition, it's always a draft because it's always subject to change, as opposed to the capital budget, which goes to town meeting and gets appropriated. The money's there unless a change is made down the road. That's the way it is.
So when you're voting on your budget at annual town meeting, you'll have schools ask for this, DPW ask for that, and then there's a separate article with all of the capital budget requests in it, or is each one set? How does that work?
So the capital plan, there's no article for the capital plan. The capital plan is within the purview of the capital planning committee, the town administrator, director of building operations. So that's something that we work with internally. But my point is that we, for the first time in many, many years, the capital planning committee actually took a vote to say, yes, this is our 5-year capital plan. Here it is. We put it out there. But the town meeting doesn't vote on that. Town meeting only votes on what's being actually appropriated.
So the 1-year budget is transactional approval. The 5-year plan is informational,
Exactly.
data.
It's a working document.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And that makes sense. I mean, that's.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, so the 1-year capital plan, does that get voted on as the capital plan for the town at town meeting as it stands?
Capital budget.
Capital budget, so if there's 10 things in there, they get voted all as one piece, they're not per department or anything.
Is it 10 votes or is it 1 vote?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting
It's
at.
gone in different directions. Currently, I think we had 3 articles, and it was set up by source of funds.
Okay,
Okay,
that was kind of where I was headed.
so all of these things totaling, it was 3-point-something million, I think.
Yeah.
Are coming from free cash. Which basically available funds, source of funds. It could include stabilization funds, although we don't,
Yep.
that's not typically
It's
where
hard
we
to
take
mix,
money
yeah,
from,
yeah.
but we could. The one thing we don't do is put in the mix enterprise funds. Those are always separate articles.
Right.
So this, as an example, this last month when we had our town meeting, there was one article for the lion's share of everything, and then there was a second article for wastewater treatment, and a third article for the golf course.
Because as I understand it, the way that ours was set up is half or so came from the override and half or so came from the town budget for the capital items that we recommended.
Okay?
Okay,
So when you're crafting, when the town administrator, town manager is crafting the wording for the motion or the wording in the article, it could include multiple sources of funds, but, the one thing we don't do and you wouldn't want to do is mix, basically money that comes from taxation with money that comes from a fee, which is what enterprise funds are.
right, that makes sense.
What is a capital project? What's the dollar value at which you put it on the list?
That's a good question. So we, when the state went from 10,000 to 25,000 as a minimum threshold, we did the same thing shortly after that. That being said, we encourage departments to send us one-time items that are less than 25,000. Sometimes we'll get stuff for 3,000 or 4,000. There's not a requirement that we take any action on it or make a recommendation, but it encourages transparency, it encourages open communication, it lets it, and then it also encourages departments to not just kind of forget about things or try to bury it in their budget or whatever, but, to actually be open about, we had $8,000 worth of asbestos tiles we had to get taken care of. It's less than the 25, or in your case, I think you have 20. But that's okay. Our bylaw just says that if it's over 25,000, it must come to us.
And if it's over 25,000, but broken up in 3 payments, or broken up by, or leased,
It's the value of the project. Or
regardless of how it's paid or the dollar source.
Right, so the source, it's regardless of the source of funds or the method of payment.
And does this include vehicles for the police department, vehicles for the school, for whatever we're?
Ours does, and that's really an open question, particularly about police vehicles. So we, the police department in town has a policy of purchasing and cycling out 2 vehicles per year. And for the most part, the town has kept up with that. And by doing that, it's kind of right on the edge of whether it's, because in addition to the dollar value, 5-year useful life. So it's kind of not necessarily quite 5 years that a police cruiser is used before it's cycled out. So, the argument is made all the time, and it's perfectly legitimate that, hey, that should just be in their operating budget. It's really not, by definition, a capital item, but we continue to.
But it
So-
comes before you, and it's kind of a routine,
It is.
and
So-
every year we approve it. No.
And it's also routine that certain members of town meeting always object to it.
I
You have
was
the town
gonna say, that
curmudgeon?
means it has to go before the ATM, doesn't it? Okay.
You have the town curmudgeon stands up for every funding article there is.
No, no, it's not
Would
that.
you like
It's-
one?
We have one.
Yeah.
Every town does. It's actually more in recent years, folks that have wanted to reduce
So-
the police budget, want to spend less money.
So if there's 2 police cars, what's in the police budget is the lease expense for year 1 for each of those.
But we don't lease, we just purchase them.
You just purchased.
Yeah, so it's always come from free cash.
So you guys spend whatever it is, $200,000 or whatever, I don't know what the magic number is,
Like probably 140 this year.
for two.
Mhm.
And that comes right out of free cash, and so there's not a lease proposition or whatever associated with it.
No.
Okay.
No.
But it's not considered a capital expenditure, it's just.
It is considered a
Okay.
capital expenditures. Yeah, it's not in the police budget, it's in the capital budget.
Got it.
But he's saying it's kind of.
It could go either
on
way.
the
Some
line,
communities do it
and
the other
they've
way.
chosen,
Yeah.
they've
Yeah,
chosen
no,
to
yeah.
keep it out of
In
the
Belchertown.
operating.
Right,
The purchase meets the definition of a capital, but it is covered in their operational expense.
Okay.
So we've had some discussions on the formality of it.
And I think that's tradition. Tradition is the way we've always done it, not necessarily by the book, the way we should be doing it 10 years from now.
right.
Yeah.
A lot of towns and stuff have their own specialized budget for the police department.
Yeah.
Especially because the vehicles are extremely specialized.
Yep.
You know, it's not like you walk in and say, you know, I'd like to have a Ford police car. You know, there's a whole industry to it, and they're all special units.
So Ira, because you mentioned quickly the 5-year capital plan, this was our first year. And we
Yeah.
came in and we just focused on the 1 year.
Sure.
And this, I just got the bottom here, this is what we had to work with.
Yeah. Eric sent that to me and I.
Yeah, they didn't get anything near this, as you can imagine.
Right.
So, I mean, in my thought is, this is the basis for us creating a 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
The projects that are in here, things, I mean, some of the ones that we did approve this year weren't even on this list.
Right.
Which,
So I hear what you're saying. It's just so, it's a working document. It's just so that the select board and the finance committee have a tool to forecast with.
In my 20+ years on South Hadley's capital planning committee, I can say pretty confidently that there's never been a year when we haven't approved something for expenditure that wasn't on the list the year before. That just kind of came out of wherever and it had to be done.
which could change day to day.
Yeah, and we meet more or less monthly now. We didn't used to, and it's really just been in the last 2 years or so that we've started meeting. So we would, for a long time, we would have town meeting. We might have another meeting, say this time, like a month later, and then we may not meet for 6 months. That has changed.
Wow.
That has changed. So, and
It gives you some continuity.
I wanted,
Yeah.
as chair, I said, if I'm gonna do this, I would like us to meet on a more regular basis and on the back end of the cycle, to get more updates on how
Right.
things are going. I mentioned, that we really didn't have an approved capital plan in place, so that was part of why we were meeting more regularly.
So I did pull up the plan that Ira provided us.
Yeah.
And it's quite simple. I mean, I'm not saying it's simple, but
It's so simple, a child could do it.
but it's basically just the project listed out, the cost, and per fiscal year.
So is there any rank to this?
No, so what Brian pulled up is what is on the town's website. It's what went to town meeting members, and that is the most simplified version of it. But you have other attachments there that are more complex, that have different tabs.
Okay, which one should I open?
Let's see. Is there one there that says Middlefield? Do the Middlefield one. It's not. It's very much a draft. It's something I helped them with
Come
more than a year ago, I think. Is that not one open?
No, we just welcome to
Oh, there we
Belchertown.
All right, so we have an internal document that's similar to this that we use in South Hadley, but this is one that I put together for them. Forget about any of the actual items or numbers in there, but just in terms of the format. So you can see that's a capital plan. The second tab is the capital budget, which is, it's just taking the current year of the plan.
Well, just real quick, you have total score there. What does that represent?
So the way it's a scoring. So once all of our deliberations are done, or anybody's deliberations are done, my suggestion would be that everybody individually complete a ranking sheet, a score sheet of, and it could be whatever you want it to be, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. It could be, and it could be defined however you want it to be, but everybody completes one, and then it's just a composite.
And is it part of your
Score.
expectation that the department would also rank what they think is?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Like DPW say, we need a truck body, then we need this, and
yeah. Well, that's just part of the conversation.
Okay.
So they have 5 vehicles that they're looking for, and it's like, okay, we can't do all 5. What's your
right.
Give us a priority. What do we need now, and what can we put off? So if you look at that, the columns in the middle there, source of funds. So you have cost in column G, is it? No, column D, I'm sorry. So that's the basic cost, and then there are some suggestions about what the source of funding could be, so free cash, a new annual appropriation, stabilization fund, grants. The issue of grants can be handled different ways. In South Hadley, for a long time, grants were not part of anything that we reviewed, much to my dismay. My feeling about it is that you should.
Another revenue source.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a grant that's already in hand. Sometimes it's a grant that's going to be applied for. Sometimes that grant comes with a requirement for additional funding, matching funds or what have you. And sometimes that grant comes with an obligation to spend money out of the operating budget to maintain it. So, an upgrade to a park, and now, okay, so now DPW, Parks Department's gotta spend X number of extra dollars to maintain it.
We discussed this at our last meeting, and one of the things that was pointed out is that majority of grants have a certain process to it and requirement. And we all agreed that the capital committee should be notified, but really not involved with the decision of it because it's a whole separate process. So that, because it is, like you said, it's basically another source, but it also, it's not really coming out. I'm thinking about one. It's only temporarily coming out of the budget, but then being replenished.
My personal opinion is that the benefit of being an advisory committee is you can have an opinion. And in my view, you're entitled to give your opinion. It's like, unless they're telling you, we don't want your opinion, give your opinion. It's not, you're not making the final decision. So,
So the way you prioritize, you've got all these projects, you've had all the discussion, you've had all the back and forth, and then you individually, in private, put a ranking on it.
yes.
And
Send that to the chair.
send
or
that to the chair,
whoever is gonna
and the
compile it.
chair compiles it and says, here's whatever. And does the money source, does the fact that it's from a grant, or the fact that it's from the stabilization fund or free cash or operating, is that an important part of the prioritization decision-making process?
So that's an individual decision that each member of the committee would have, but I would say generally, yes, sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would think that if a department, the fire department gets a grant for a new fire truck like we have, of course we're gonna approve it. I mean, it's a specific funds for a specific item.
But a lot of the grants have matching fund requirements, and so,
Okay,
so yeah, we'll give you 50 cents on the dollar for a fire truck. But that means that DPW doesn't get something they need.
But what makes it easier for us through this process, and probably your committee, is we don't have any decision on where the money comes from or how it's funded. That's not in our purview.
Well, you're not doing the appropriating, but you are presumably making the decision to recommend. And
That could put the grant in a very precarious position, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm on the building and grounds committee here in town.
Mhm.
We right now are looking at Tadgell School, which is shut down, and we're doing a feasibility study in order to figure out what is it really good for, other than a school. And there are various steps to this that we have to complete during a certain time frame. And we're actually applying for more money to see if we can get the roof fixed, because that part was done out there. So my fear is that it will come to a different committee that says, well, I don't think we really need to do this on such a day. Okay, my opinion is it should be informational only because of the specialty of various grants, so that we know that there's funds coming in and going out, but it does not affect the full town's operating budget.
okay, I think every situation is different.
I agree.
So sometimes there could be a grant deadline, grant deadline that has to be met. It just doesn't comport with whatever the schedule is for, whether it's your committee or finance or whatever. So, maybe it happens one way in this case and another way in another case. I guess the only little bit of pushback I would have is that anything that you can do to, just over the course of time to facilitate really as open communication as possible is great. So, all things being equal, you don't want to turn down money that's being, that's an opportunity there to have Um, and we do, so as part of our responsibility, we do review studies.
Mhm.
So, whether it's master plan or, the type of thing with a school to do a feasibility study. We're in the process of wanting to replace an elementary school, which is of course, huge. So we were involved minimally, not a big deal with, you know, having that committee formed. There's a member of the capital planning committee that serves on the committee, the building committee for the school and, all of that sort of stuff. So
How well does the 9-member board work?
I think it works pretty well. It's not been difficult to fill, particularly because you have different boards and different people that are sending members. We're always fully, from time to time, we might be down a member because somebody's left town or had to resign for something, but we are typically at 9 members, and we will normally have 6, 7, 8 at any given meeting.
Interesting.
I don't remember the last time we had to cancel a meeting for lack of a quorum.
I want to ask about the 5-year plan for a minute.
Mhm.
And that is, what's your annual capital appropriations roughly? 3 million?
No, it's not that much.
It's 2 million.
It's $1 million to $1.5 million on average. This was an
Okay.
unusual year, and it's specifically because of those 2 school projects that I mentioned.
Let's say it's $1 million.
Yeah.
And you say to the school and the DPW and police and everything, over the next 5 years, what is it that you'll be looking for? And they each come in with $6 million worth of stuff for the next 5 years.
Mhm.
Okay, so they each want $1 million worth of whatever. You're not going to put out a 5-year plan that shows on year 3 it's we need to spend $6 million, and on year 4 we need to spend $5.5 million and whatever. How do you get them to pare down their 5-year wish list so that the 5-year plan shows a reasonable $1 million to $2 million per year planning need going forward?
Well, I think all of the parties understand that, money's not unlimited, and that this is what we have to spend.
That's what we got to tell them.
Money's unlimited.
Money's not unlimited. No,
So
go ahead.
Lisa
Sorry.
Long is our town administrator. She's going into, I think, probably her 4th year. She and her predecessor, Mike Sullivan, both would essentially kind of give us a target number of what we're looking for capital in any given year. It's for as long as I can remember, it's averaged in that $1 to $1.5 million range from free cash. Sometimes there are other
Yeah.
funds available.
So basically, they can present all they want in their wish list, and their wish list might total up to $18 million worth of stuff.
Right.
But you're then pushing back and saying, all right, in year 3 of everything that you put on year 3, it's only the first couple of items that are going to be realistically done,
Mhm.
which means that on year 2, your item number 5, 6, and 7 are never going to see the light of day.
I mean, that's sort of a general, it's hard to say, it depends on what it is. So one thing I would say, Mike, though, I would caution
Okay,
about
that's what I need.
is characterizing what's on the list as a quote wish list.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because that implies it's not realistic, it's never gonna happen.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You can put all the first teeth under your pillow, the tooth fairy is still not gonna fund it. So a needs list, and encourage people to be, right from the get-go, realistic about what is actually needed to maintain or to adjust or improve or whatever it is, whatever the rationale is, the level of service that these capital items are gonna facilitate.
Does the committee, when it's working, vote by consensus or by group in terms of the rankings and what's on the list and everything? Like, how involved a discussion is that to get the outcome that you want?
So the ranking process is very short term and it doesn't happen until really the end of the whole deliberation process. So, the time when we'll meet maybe more than once a month is January, February through maybe March.
That's what we kind of talked about, yeah.
Yep. Our new revised bylaw requires that we put out our report a month prior to town meeting.
Before I
So-
forget,
Yeah.
can you send a copy of that bylaw to us?
It's in there.
It's in there? Okay, I didn't
Yes,
see.
I sent it.
Okay.
So we will typically, so that's, I think our town meeting was May 12th, whatever the second Wednesday of May was. So a month prior to that is when we needed to have our report out, which we sort of hit. And it wasn't too many days before that each of our individual ranking sheets came in, got compiled, and then spit back to us as a composite score,
Yep.
which is a very useful tool in terms of coming up with our final recommendations. So, if there are 30 items that are being requested and we're on a scale of 1 to 5, and it's pretty easy to come up with where the cutoff is. And then, so you have conversations about, well, why was this lower or higher? And maybe, one member of the committee makes an argument that
Mm-hmm.
they think that's less important or more important. But it makes that last meeting before we vote, fairly easy to do.
Has your select board been very accepting of your?
Yeah.
That you gave, they accepted as presented? Do they ever beat it up?
Not once.
What about the finance?
And finance or appropriations, nope.
Are they just as happy that it's somebody else's bailiwick and they're
I wouldn't characterize it that way. No, I think it's really a pretty congenial process. It hasn't always been that way, but in recent years it has.
Now,
And it has to do with just communicating.
now, when South Hadley has whatever we want to call it, a tri-boards meeting or whatever you want to refer to it as,
We do that.
is the capital planning committee considered one of the people at the table on that tri-boards thing?
Not
Where it's-
normally.
Okay.
Occasionally, as chair, occasionally.
Then it would be a
invited
quad
to-
board.
No, I like the idea of the tri-boards meeting. I'm not trying to force us onto it. I'm just trying to,
So I mean, I was personally thrilled that they accepted our report as.
yep.
And and Eric did a great job
Yeah.
up there. And even
On
with
one
the,
leg.
even with the,
Oh, the
with the
mics.
sound system going down. And, and I think we got everybody's attention, what was requested and how we had to
Yep.
narrow it down. And I think the town manager talked to some of the departments about adjusting the projects that they sent to us. What do you really need? And was able to come up with some better numbers, and it worked out well. I was glad to see that, even though it's a policy's only as good as the organization that
So,
wants to enforce it.
so I'm gonna take a couple stabs here. One, it feels like we're on the right track, which is good.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Two, the process by which things make the list. We have a pretty good list going now, and therefore, whatever gets added to it over the coming few months will be able to integrate in pretty well, I think. I like the idea that we're coming up with a 5-year plan, and I like the idea that we should stick to that. When you mentioned that there was some backing off of that, and you had to kind of redo it this year or get it back in place, I think that's just a good, tale of make sure that everybody's paying attention. I know Steve is very much in favor of working with this committee. He was,
Yeah.
I mean, he, absolutely. So we're very fortunate with that. We're very fortunate with the override to match up monies and the support we got from the town. But I mean, I think we're in a great spot too right now to keep it moving, which is important with all the other things going on. So
So I feel a lot better about our ability to put down on paper a comprehensive 5-year
Yeah,
plan that
exactly.
means something.
yeah,
Because I was concerned about, how do we reconcile $18 million worth of stuff
Yeah.
over a 5-year plan? And I feel a lot better having heard from you how you guys are handling it and whatnot as far as our ability
right.
to do it. I want to second what Brian said about how impressed I am with the seriousness that the select board took our report and said, we'll take it. That's, you guys know what you're talking about. We're not going to second guess. We're not going to, tell you you're right, wrong, or indifferent. If this is what you said, it's what we believe.
Funny part about it is we had it, the night that we had it, huge crowds came out for the Proposition 2.5 thing, which I didn't know. I'm sitting there going like, wow, Steve's report's got to be really good if he's entertaining all these people.
And then third, as you say, Steve, the town manager, 100%
Genuine.
believes in
It's
us.
absolutely
Genuinely
genuine. Yep.
believes in us. So I feel very good about where we are going forward.
Couple of things. Earlier on in this conversation, somebody mentioned about the police cruisers being included in your operating budget.
So first of all, they're leased. They're not purchased like you.
Okay, which is fine. That they're still.
But that's been traditional, our capital planning, we didn't even have a policy in place until this past fiscal year.
No, I
So,
understand.
Yeah, it was.
So it rose through the budget process.
No, all I want to say is that, so operating budget is a source of funding, the same as free cash is a source of funding, or a stabilization fund, or a grant, or what have you. In my view, regardless of how it gets funded, or regardless of how it gets paid for, whether it's cash or whether it's a lease or bonding or whatever, capital planning committee should have a role in that, in my opinion. So I did notice that cruisers, I assume that there was 1 or 2 cruisers that was in this year's budget. It's not in here anywhere.
Right.
But it is, I mean, it's an item that is over $20,000, and arguably, maybe yes, maybe no, more than a 5-year.
It meets the definition.
Yeah.
Of the capital.
Yeah, but don't they have their own budget?
So
It still has to get approved by town
I
meeting.
know that, but I'm just saying, like, with stuff we're looking at, and then the police department has their own budget from what I remember the town manager saying. So,
It still meets the
I agree.
definition,
I
and
agree.
I think it's just a
So-
formality,
so
Right.
is the
unless they exclude it in the.
Yeah.
Is the budget process on South Hadley in the place that you have the budgets that come forward from the various departments, and that includes the capital needs that come to the capital committee? Is the way that it's accepted a go, no-go proposition? Like if you guys say, no, we don't think so this year, it comes off for whoever is looking for it? Like, let's say we're looking for a new dump truck. And it turns out to be 15th on a list of which the first 10 things got funded. Then it sits in that item sits and waits, and has the capital committee approved it, but it doesn't make it to town meeting because there's not enough dollars? Like by what process is that?
So, in the case that you're talking about, you got a vehicle that didn't make the cut.
Right.
So the way it's always worked in South Hadley is the capital committee makes a recommendation. It goes to the select board, it goes to the finance committee,
Right.
they take their votes. It does or doesn't make the warrant. in theory, anybody can amend an article.
Right.
In theory, the select board can put it back on, say, no, we don't agree. It hasn't happened,
Yeah.
but it could.
Okay.
So does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah. I'm just wondering how, the process governs itself almost is what you're saying, that you're using, by which the capital committee says, okay, we really want to see this funded. Because what I was thinking of, maybe this would be an easy way to explain it. We had a list and we got to about half of it and that was all the money there was. And then the 2.5 override came along and said, okay, the other half of it, or the majority of the other half of it is here for you. We wouldn't have been in that position right now if that hadn't happened that way. So I'm just trying to juxtapose those two things in my mind and how that works.
But I don't know exactly what's on the list, I mean, you've got $18 million on there, you've funded 800,000
Right.
and something. So presumably there's a whole bunch more out of that
Right.
18 million that was just sort of arbitrarily pushed off till a future year.
Not arbitrarily, but.
Well,
800,000 for new windows for a school that is slated to be closed down in the next few years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just stuff like that. So it's.
No, I was gonna say, I wanna object though, not object, I wanna clarify. Our role is to say, here's what we believe, this is our recommendation.
Right.
In our priority in
Right.
that recommendation.
Right.
And it's not that, we said, well, here's the 10 projects that have to be done, find the money.
Right. No, I wasn't trying to imply
It's
that.
it's strictly, we are advisory,
Right.
and we say, here's the hierarchy. But if someone, if the powers that be put 1, 2, 3, 4, 9
Right.
and say that's what we're gonna fund, then that's what shows up at the
Right.
annual town meeting.
Yep.
So it wasn't a case of we proposed 10, 400,000 was paid for this way, and the other 400,000 they had to
Right.
go elsewhere.
Right.
Well,
I
that's
think
why
you're saying the same thing.
we have to stress to each of those departments how important this is, so that when we do get the sheets back, we know that buying, let's say, a dump truck is a high priority over, say, a sign that says, here we are.
Right, and that's a good point, is that we are their voice
That's
in them being able to get
Right.
that dump truck
Right.
or the windows for the school.
So therefore, I mean, it's not a go, no go proposition, but what we're saying has value in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I hear, I mean, I think you're totally on the right track. I hear some trepidation about, what happens when there's conflict.
What do you mean?
There hasn't been any conflict. The school department,
Exactly.
the DPW,
Yeah.
they came in here, they were fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, people are, almost everyone is reasonable.
Yeah.
Almost everyone, understands, like we've been saying, that, it's not, there's not an endless amount of money.
Yep.
And you have to make decisions. So I think based on what you've done so far, I personally don't think you're gonna run into those sorts of issues where there's any or much pushback.
I think you just stumbled on a really good new bumper sticker. Almost everyone is reasonable.
When it comes to funding their municipal
He's
government.
writing it down.
I am, and I like that one.
You're not married, are you?
So
Oh, yeah,
That can be our,
Been married
that can be
for
our
30 years.
motto.
Yeah, except my wife.
Planning
Well,
approval.
first of
So
all-
when you put I have a question though, as far as the 5-year plan. You're gonna put out a 5-year plan and you've got, year 1 is the actual budget.
Correct.
And then year 2, you've got a list of things on there. And 12 months later, you're gonna put out your actual budget, which is gonna be different.
Correct.
Do you get grief or pushback or issues about, hey, wait a minute, what happened to the
Once in a
new
while.
carpet for whatever.
You
Once in a
know,
while,
you know,
but
one of
not
the things is, like Gus, he's a seasoned member of town structure. So a little pushback is all relative. Your first time through the process, you're worried about it at all. After a few years, you go, yeah, there's gonna be some pushback.
But you don't get
I think
eggs on your
pushback is
house.
good. Yeah. What's that?
You don't get eggs thrown on your house.
No,
Not
not
yet.
yet.
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
I just
No.
look at this as like a living budget. It's gonna change every time we get together. And when you look at the budget at the end of the year, what you spent versus what was requested, there'll be changes on there.
So, take a look at the bylaw that we have.
Yep.
See if any of it makes sense. You know, as we said early on in this conversation, it's not crucial that you have one, but, you know, maybe there are some things there that you want to consider, at least in terms of adding to the policy that's in place.
Well, let me reassure you guys that, go ahead now.
I was just gonna say, I do think that having you weigh in on the source of funds is a good thing, as opposed to, here's what we think you should do, go find the money.
Right.
You know, that's like, that gives other folks the opportunity to say, well, you might have your opinion, but, you know, where's the money? So if you can say, this is where we believe the money should come from,
Right.
I think that's, you know, that's a positive. In terms of the makeup of the committee, you know, I would just tell you from my experience that having members of the committee, populate the committee that are representing, at least in name, you know, certain constituencies, schools or,
Yeah.
you know, what have you, there's a benefit to that. I do know that, for instance, our school committee reps, neither of which are, well, no, I take that back. One of which is now an actual school committee member. But over time, they've not always been members of the school committee. They might have been past members or whatever. But it facilitates getting communication back to the school department, to other school committee members about what's happening on the capital side of things. Same goes with our appropriations committee. So
We did not have one visitor aside from one of the candidates for select board to sit in on one of our meetings. That was it.
right.
And we've had good-
And we don't typically have many.
I was gonna say, I've known Ira long enough to know that if he didn't like what we were doing, he would have told us.
Right.
So, that's all good. I really appreciate you coming
Thank
to
you.
help us.
Thank
Yeah,
you
we do
very much.
appreciate it.
Very informative.
The only thing I'd like to see with a bylaw with Belchertown is that a certain amount of money is gonna be spent on capital every year. Yes, it can be overridden by a vote.
Well, that's the way they tried to set it up in the original, so. we'll see
So
if we
right
get
now,
there.
we do have
I don't know.
Yeah,
uh,
0.5% or something.
a number. It's a
Comes out
lot,
to $400,000.
it's a lot smaller than
Give or
South
take a little
Hadley's,
bit.
but that's okay.
Yeah, well,
It's starting somewhere.
yeah, you know, the grass is always greener wherever, right? There's some stuff going on our side of the
Oh,
street
yeah.
that I wish I was in Belchertown. So,
Thank you very much for coming.
you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
This has been very, very informative.
Great.
I appreciate it.
Nice talking with you. Nice meeting you guys. Good luck. I'm happy to come back any other time or feel free. Eric can give you
Oh, yeah.
my contact information if you want to call me.
Yeah, Ira's good about responding and everything else. So.
No, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us.
I'm gonna go to a rehearsal now.
I'll call you over the next couple days
Okay.
just to check in.
And I play in the Belchertown community game.
There you go. What's that?
I need us to approve,
Did we,
What was that?
we had minutes we were supposed to approve. I just want to make sure.
Bye-bye.
Thank
All
you, my
right,
friend.
make a motion to approve.
Are there any
the
questions?
minutes of April 30th, 2025.
I second.
Any questions, concerns, or otherwise? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Is that the only thing we missed?
Confirm next meeting date is July, I don't remember here we go, 16.
Yep.
Are these things, documents are they?
I sent them to everybody before the meeting, just like
Oh.
right before, because I only connected. He was in Europe traveling, so I didn't have a chance to connect with him.
We could have met with him over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the little junket from Belchertown, huh? Anything else we missed, sir?
No, just FYI, if we ever do get around to coming up with a, some kind of a simplified tracking.
Yeah.
I came up with 7
Codes kind of thing.
codes, and really just trying to break it down into 7
Almost like
subsectors
like
of
buckets
responsibility.
almost.
Buckets.
Yeah.
Buckets. So police, fire.
Yep.
Buildings and grounds separate from DPW.
Yep.
That matches exactly what they have.
Oh, it
Yeah,
does.
yeah, I can show you.
No. That's fine. That's fine. And I give you a choice of whether you want a 2-digit, 2-character, or 3-character.
No, I like that. I looked at it at the beginning.
Anyway, that's all I've got.
So at the next meeting, we'll focus back on our stuff and how we can be organizing the whole 5-year thing, as well as the format that we want that sheet in. Because we should get that.
Plus it's a new fiscal year.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're doing well.
Are we adjourning?
We are. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
5:19.
Good job.
You gotta stop the recording first,
Good job by everybody.
or you can leave the session.